Hey everyone, I'm AKDI. I'm from Turkey. I'm Simon's wife. And today we're reviewing a movie called Straw Dogs.
This is a fan request from our longtime subscriber, follower. His name is Nelson Moreno, and we recently did a Serbian film, which got quite a lot of views, even though it tortured our souls. And we're always going to be doing fan service. So if you have a film that you want us to review, put it in the comments. We'll try to cover it. And Nelson, keep on sending films. But we watched this last night, and I can say generally, I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't know what to expect going into it. I thought it was going to be more brutal, more gory, more violent. Um, you know, because we watched it on fedupmovies.com, but it was actually like kind of like an action film. It turned out to be an action suspense thriller, just with a lot more build up at the very beginning. But yeah, what did you think of it?
I mean, it was okay for me. Like I was expecting kind of like an old horror movie, and I guess it kind of suits that. Like it was like a thriller, and I just think like because of the time it was shot, I cannot like just overlook sort of, the misogyny and other like, anti um feminist things in the
Mhm.
movie. But I get that that's because of like the nature of that time, because this movie was shot in 1971.
Yeah.
And but overall I think it was okay. Like, would I watch it again? Probably no. Did it change my life? No, but I do think this is a movie, like, as you talk about it more, you learn different things and you notice different themes around the story. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
I'm interested to know why you think the film is anti-feminist, because I think in this film, of course, horrible things happen to women, but I think it's done in the way where, like, the women are not actively, encouraging other women's demise or mistreatment, and what they suffer from is solely at the hands of callous men, who do not know better.
Yeah, I think because like how women are made to act and their lines in this movie for me makes it like misogynistic or anti-feminist, because they are just very passive, or they just like look dumb a
Hmm.
little bit, especially like also with the characters looking like, they're supposed to be the pretty girl with blonde hair and blue eyes and, a hot body, and that's all they're good for. And that's just
Okay.
like sort of how the movie portrays it, if that makes sense.
I got you. I got you. Well, we'll talk more about that, but let's open it up. So, yeah, this film was directed by a guy named Sam Peckinpah. And Sam Peckinpah was a prodigious filmmaker in the 20th century. He's released a lot of cult classics, and this is one of them. And yeah, it stars Dustin Hoffman and Susan George. And the film opens with these kids playing Ring Around the Posy in like a graveyard. And it seems like they're like in a small, quaint village somewhere in the English countryside or whatever. And then we see this, blonde hair, blue eyed girl walk out into the streets with like her tits perking out of her sweater. And she's obviously not wearing a bra, and she's walking like with this other young girl with like a short skirt. And they meet up with this guy who's in his like drop top car, and he has a huge bear trap in the back. And we find out that the girl who's walking, whose tits we see and all the villagers are staring at, her name is Amy. And Amy is in town and back in her hometown with her new husband from America, and his name is David. And so, they're in the middle of the town, and all the kids are like stopping and staring at them, and all the villagers are stopping and staring at them too. And, Amy meets up with some guys that she knew from her past. One of them is named Charlie, and Charlie was like her ex-boyfriend, way back in the day, Charlie Venner. And, also some other guys there, Norman Scott, Chris Causey, and Phil Ridaway, but their names aren't important, so we'll just call them Idiot 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah. But, yeah, basically, David is like this math scientist who just got a grant to go, work on some projects. So he came to the English countryside to get some peace and quiet at their country estate that they have outside of town, right? And, yeah, what did you think about like the opening sequence and everything like that, introducing the town? I didn't cover the part where he walked into the bar. He also walks into like the local tavern where all the British guys are getting drunk, and there's this one guy who's always there getting drunk with the big beard. His name is Tom Hedden, and he has a daughter named Janice. And Janice was like the other girl walking with Amy at the beginning, and Janice is like, kind of loose, kind of kind of like a young promiscuous girl, and and yeah, there's also this other guy in town named Henry Niles, and Henry Niles is like the village idiot that everybody sort of hates, and I guess it's because he might have been accused of doing something very bad in the past, something heinous, probably to kids or something like that. But yeah, any comments about the beginning?
I mean, in the beginning, it just felt like, Amy and David, the couple, they were like, obviously Amy was from there, and then David had an American accent. So it just kind of feels like, oh, I'm coming to my hometown and I'm gonna show everybody that I'm like so fancy now.
Hmm.
It sort of felt like that's like the way, she was walking without a bra. Because I feel like, especially someone from like a traditional country, like there are certain places where I won't wear shorts. I will always wear a bra, because I know those places are just like that. Like Giresun, for example, we went there together. So yeah, like, and I just felt like she was sort of trying to defy that, saying like, I married a scientist, an American, a foreigner, and yeah, I'm coming here to show y'all like what happened to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then like everyone in the small town was obviously like watching them and stuff. So that's very like familiar to me,
Hmm.
especially like we went there with you to my small town, even though in my small town people are used to tourists,
Hmm.
but you were still like a, foreigner, an obvious foreigner at
Hmm.
that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the beginning is very interesting because the kids playing in the graveyard is something that is a bit strange, right? Kids don't normally play in graveyards. And I think after watching the film, the beginning makes even more sense because I think what this film is talking about, like, the relationship to death, is very close when there is no law and order in this town. Or no law and order in society. Like I'm looking at this small town as like a microcosm of like a society that's barely held together by rule of law, right? And in this case, life and death are very intermingled, because somebody can be gone in the blink of an instant, right? Because life has no value or purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, when we were first watching it, if you remember, I said like, why are the kids playing in the graveyard?
Hmm.
Like that is scary. That was strange to see that. And also like when I read the comments from Letterbox last night, everyone was saying like, oh, so there's this village like filled with murderers, rapists, and crazy people and drunks. So it just feels like that. Like,
Yeah.
everyone is doing something bad in this village.
Yeah, yeah. And as for Amy, showing her tits through her bra and stuff like that, it did feel like I didn't know where the film was going at the beginning, right? Like I didn't even know what they had in the back of the car. I was like, is that like some type of contraption to fix the car? Like, is that like a tent, something like that? You get what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know what the hell they had in the car. And so with Amy walking with her tits out, I was still kind of like confused by the very beginning. And, yeah, but now after watching the film, it does, correlate to everything you just said about how, she's this girl who left her small town and now she's coming back just showing out in front of everybody. I want to talk about the scene in the bar where Tom sort of goes crazy, right? Like when David first meets Tom, he's been drinking way too much. The bartender tries to cut him off. Charlie, who is the nephew of Tom, comes in and says, Uncle, I think you've had enough. But Tom goes haywire. He smacks the glass and breaks it after, going to the other side of the bar and just takes a bottle and just starts drinking, right? And then, he leaves when the bartender threatens to call the cops. And then David leaves after paying twice for a drink that was already paid for, and the bartender's happy. Uh, looking at that scene, I'm like, that shows like in this town, really the law is like whatever the passion is at the moment, right? And maybe Tom is like really the law in town. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I think so. And also, like, for me, it was just very sort of relatable, even though I'm not an English, person.
Hmm.
Um, because yeah, in like smaller rural villages, it is kind of like that. You have the crazy of the town and the criminals of the town, and people just deal with them without really like getting the support.
Yeah,
So like you said, there's like no, police station here. There's just like one, police officer, I guess.
yeah,
And he
yeah.
is also a citizen of the town and he lives there. So it's not like he's constantly snitching on everybody.
Right.
Because probably if he did, he would have to lock up the whole village and
Yeah,
he knows like people's troubles. And that's kind of how it is in like smaller rural areas and anywhere in the world, I think.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, that's one of the big reasons we have our like gung ho cowboy gun culture in America. It's because people in the small towns are like, who's going to protect us? Who's going to defend us? We have to defend ourselves, baby. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, I don't know. The only person who had a gun in my family was like my grandfather because he used to live in the village all his life.
yeah,
And not that he would like defend himself and his family with the gun. I don't know if he ever did. He would just use it to shoot, like scare pigs.
yeah,
But that's kind of like how it is.
yeah, yeah. But going back to the story, right? David leaves the bar and Amy is driving the car and she's driving like a maniac through the town and she almost hits some people, right? And David is like, "Who were those people that you tried to hit? Were those friends of Charlie?" And she's like, "Yeah, they were, but don't worry about that." And so, David had asked some questions like, "Did you ever sleep with Charlie?" And she denies it, right? She says, he tried to get into her pants a few times, but she always said no, right? And I thought that was interesting, right? The opening part, when we first watched it, I really didn't like Amy, right? But after watching the film, I'm looking back now and I'm starting to like Amy some more. Now, there's some weird stuff she does, like when she's in the car with David, he's tickling her and then she tries to like attack his penis and suck it in the passenger seat. Right? She also does some other annoying things later. But I'm sympathetic somewhat to Amy because reading in between the lines now, I feel like Amy came back to this village and she feels like she made it. She came back, she got her American zaddy. She can now feel free and liberated. She's, much better than all these small town jerks she left behind, right? And even when she pulls up to the house that her and David live at, she sees one of those old guys she used to know way in the past and she makes out with David right in front of this guy. You know what I mean? But anyway, what did you think about Amy, in that part?
Um, yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I didn't have a judgment about Amy. I didn't dislike her. I disliked her later on in the movie.
Mm.
But for me, in the beginning, like I said, also, I think she was like stuck in between, like showing off to, her village, about her man and how she's, living right now in this big house.
Hmm.
And also she's trying to, I think, at the same time prove to David that she's a fun, freaky city girl. She's not just a village girl. She's nothing like the people who live there, even though she used to live there. And, yeah, that's just how I felt about like that car ride and her trying to like, suck him and then like, making out with him and stuff like that. And there was also a scene where I guess Charlie, came onto her
Hmm.
and at the car before David left the bar when he was in the bar.
Yeah.
And Charlie said something like, "Did you miss this?" or something. So we sort of got the idea that they might have a history together. But
Yeah.
then she was like, "Get away from me, don't touch me," or anything like that. And then she didn't tell that to David.
Right. So, do you think she was lying? Do you think she actually did sleep with Charlie?
I think that might be possible. Or maybe like second base.
What I think happened And, you're seeing a lot of similarities in this story about like rural Turkey. There's also a lot of similarities here, for me growing up in like rural Louisiana, small town Louisiana. Um, in your part of the world, rural parts are conservative. In my part, we're conservative, but we're also fucking, right? So there's nothing else to do in Monroe, Louisiana, except, get your thing touched by another person your age. You get what I'm saying? So everybody's hunching. So I imagine that, yeah, Amy did, probably fuck Charlie. And I would imagine also, fuck it, I'm gonna say it, she might have been fucking everybody in town, or everybody,
Wow.
because it's a small ass town. All these people are around the same age. They grew up together. I think it's possible Amy might have slept with a bunch of the guys in town and might have been seen as like the neighborhood slut. And then she came back and she glowed up, and now everybody's sort of like, how does she do that? You get what I'm saying?
I mean, yeah, it might be possible. And also, like, even in Turkey, yes, we are conservative, but like that stuff still happens. People are still a lot like fucking a lot and drinking a lot and gambling a lot because, like you said, there's nothing else to do. It's just
Hmm.
more taboo
Hmm.
because of like the religion aspect of it.
Yeah.
And like still to this day, more births come from rural parts. You know, people get married or have kids, youngest in those parts.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just like the perception is different, maybe a little bit.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's just like the vibe I got from her.
Right.
And
Right.
also like, the way like she had that confrontation with Charlie and she didn't tell David about it. It
Yeah.
also felt like she still had those like rural town, um, traditions in her.
Hmm.
Like, keep everything that happens because, it's your pride. You're a woman. Like, don't say anything, even if they touch you.
Hmm.
You will be seen as like a dirty person or a dirty girl, whatever, things like that. Those are very common in at least like rural Turkey.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. I think also she was just trying to move past Charlie. Like, get up off me, boy. Don't you see? I got some BAC up in me now. So.
Wow.
Anyway, so yeah, David and Amy pull up at the crib and they meet like two of the guys who are gonna be working on this garage. So David is like this intellectual math guy. He's not good with working with his hands. Plus he's busy writing his book or whatever. And, the local guys who Amy knows are gonna be working on this garage, and they're coming up to David like, oh, Mr. David, thanks for coming. Oi, David, welcome, chap. And so they're asking him questions about America. Heard it's crazy in America. They're shooting the blacks, Vietnam, all sorts of wars and trouble, yeah? Did you see it? And I thought that was one of the most interesting things because it's like, wherever we go as Americans, everybody knows all our dirt because everybody's like obsessed with us. Plus we're fucking over everybody else. So of course they're thinking about what we're doing next, right? And, yeah, it was sort of crazy because like we have seen in this film so far, like, the town old man, like Tom, he tore up a bar and like, everybody else was kind of poor and ignorant and stupid, but they're looking at David and seeing him through the lens of what they know on TV. I thought that was interesting, that conversation right there. But what did you think?
Yeah, like even though all of those people that were working around the house, they were just like construction workers in a rural town of England. It felt like they still saw themselves better than David
Mhm.
because maybe they felt like they were real men in a
Mhm.
way because they work with their hands and they know the trouble of the world and things like that.
Mhm.
So maybe that's why, or maybe just because he's American. And I think it was the combination of both.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a conversation that happens afterwards. Like David goes inside and he hears that the guys are like laughing at him and stuff like that. And Amy comes up to him and, sits her feet on under his whiteboard or blackboard, whatever. And David's like, why were they laughing? And she says, because you're strange. And he said, is it because I'm American? And then he says, no. Then she says, no, it's just because you're strange. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's like they just view him as the outsider. Plus he's like kind of small, frail, he's clean shaven, doesn't look like he's worked with his hands a day in his life unless he's like masturbating for the seventh time. So, yeah,
Wow. And he's a scientist. He's like a smart guy.
yeah, yeah. So, but speaking of that, right? Like, do you think there is some sort of like, power imbalance between David and Amy? Because like every time Amy talks about her man, right, he always sort of like downplays like what she says about him. Like, Amy said to Charlie, like, he's writing a book about astral celestial physics, and David's just like, yeah, haha, good try, stuff like that, right? And then, she's coming into his study and like changing the plus sign to a minus sign, and always getting at him on not spending time with her. What do you think about that? Do you feel like David feels himself like superior to Amy?
I don't know if he feels superior, but I feel like definitely he feels like Amy doesn't understand the importance of what he's doing and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't understand like the capacity that he has as, scientist who's doing a bunch of stuff. And, yeah, like I think he just sees sort of Amy like, you know, like someone who he can spend his life with, but
Mm-hmm.
not share his work or ideals or ideas with. It's
Yeah.
more like, she's his, toy, also like someone that he can have fun with, make jokes with, goof around, but nothing like too serious. And that's how
I,
I feel like he views her.
I disagree. I mean, you do that with your girlfriend. You do that with your side piece. You do that with your mistress. You don't do that with your wife. He married Amy. And I think it's because to some degree, even though Amy exhibits a lot of ratchet behavior, ghetto behavior, she's white trash to the tilt, she's still British. And this is this is like the underlying thing. Like, for us Americans, when we hear a British accent, we automatically think that person's IQ is at least 20 points above us, right? And like Amy does stuff like she might be ratchet as hell, like, trying to suck his dick in the passenger seat. But then like later on the night, she's like reading a book about advanced chess moves, and speaking in multi-syllable words.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but like even when she's doing that, he is sort of downplaying her and saying that like she's reading the chess book because they're playing chess and she's
hmm
sort of like trying to figure out the moves as she plays.
hmm
And he makes fun of her saying like, I bet I can do my exercise, get undressed and get in the bed until like before you make your next move.
hmm
So even while she's trying to read and get educated, he sort of thinks the stuff that she's reading about is like silly for him, or
yeah.
like he doesn't need to read that because he can play chess.
Yeah, I just think, I think Europeans in general read more than us in America. Like we're here in Budapest right now, and even though we live sort of like in the ghetto, District 9, I still hop on the train every Monday and Wednesday, and I see like people reading on their way to work. You would never see that in America, I swear to God. Like, I think it's interesting how even like, kind of uneducated people, like kind of like ignorant people, still read, in the UK and Europe in general and stuff like that. You get what I'm saying? Like they might have horrible views. They might be hella racist, hella nationalistic, whatever, but they've read at least 2 novels this year, right? Americans
Yeah.
don't read a novel after ninth grade. You get what I'm saying?
Wow. I mean, I don't know if the other guys in the village were reading books,
hmm
but also like what else do you have in 1971 rural Britain?
Yeah, exactly. No
Britain.
TV, no internet, no OnlyFans, no IG.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I thought it was interesting, their dynamic in the house, right? Because there's moments of like love between them, but then there's also moments of like frustration. And like for David, right? I feel like I can relate to him because sometimes I'm off working on my own projects and stuff like that, and I feel like you feel like I'm not giving you enough attention and stuff like that, and that causes strain with us. So it was interesting. Like she would be like calling him to go to dinner, and then he would be like, I'm coming in a second. And then he comes like 2 hours later or something. By then she's in bed. Uh,
Yeah,
so
I
yeah, what did you
mean,
think of
I
that?
can understand Amy as well because, like you said, sometimes that happened with us too. But I understand like you have to work and all of that stuff. So
Hmm.
I try not to bug you so much.
Yeah, yeah. But what did you think about, the scene when David and Amy are like, fooling around in bed late night, their first night at the cabin, and Janice and her brother, the daughter and son of Tom Holland, Tom whatever, Santa Claus, drunk Santa Claus, right? They're looking through the mirror at David and Amy, getting it on. And I think her brother says to Janice, like, do you fancy him? And she's like, maybe I do. I don't know. What did you think of that?
I mean, it just felt like she was young and curious about what the fancy folks do in bed.
Mm.
Do they have sex a different way?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's how it felt like to me. Like she was just very curious. She was at the age, of being curious about sexual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she was also intrigued by the foreigner in the town.
Yeah. I think, Janice probably aspired to be like Amy, right? Because there probably weren't a lot of young women who made it out of that town and didn't get married, pregnant, and then forced to be a housewife, right? So then she's looking at Amy like, how did you do it, girl? So that's why you see them walking together at the very beginning, right? And then we also see Janice sort of like develop feelings for David over the film. But I gotta be honest, like the Janice side story in the film didn't really interest me, right? Because her overbite was distracting and like the scenes were like interspersed. It was like a side plot. It was a long side plot that didn't feel like it had a lot of weight to it in the film. It was the plot point that sort of just had to be there for later on in the story.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like it was the point of view about David in the town
Mhm.
because guys sort of thought him negatively, right?
Mhm.
They either thought he was a nerd or he was a snob or
Mhm.
he was uneducated, maybe I don't know, because he's American. And then the girl, uh, on the contrary, was attracted to him. So it's just
Mhm.
like different point of views about David when it comes to gender, I guess.
Yeah, I can see that. They were like, "Oh, look at the soft boy. Oh, he's pretty like us. Oh, I kind of like him. He actually showers at least once a week."
Wow.
Something like that. I got you. I got you. I just thought that was it just wasn't necessary, for me to be involved in the story. I was involved already with David and his conflict with the guys who are building his house and the relationship he had with Amy. My one issue though, before we delve into the rest of the story is like, I wish there was more background on how Amy and David met. Like I wish there was that conversation where they explained how they met. Now I have a theory. My theory is that, this was like the 1960s or 1970s, right? Amy decides to like be a groupie to like the Beatles, or she is like Jimi Hendrix's concubine for like 6 months during his European tour. And so then she gets groovy, wavy, drops some LSD, blah, blah, blah. And then, David is probably studying in London or in Cambridge. And then he meets this, blonde bombshell that falls into his lap, just because she hears an accent where we pronounce the R's and she just gets wet in the panties, right? And, whirlwind sex. Few months later, they get married and hitched. And David's like, I guess I made it, I guess, I guess it all worked out. I don't know. What did you think? Like, about the lack of sort of information we had on how they met and, their dynamic before they got married.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting if they showed that
Hmm.
because then maybe we would get a better look on like how both of them were before they were together. Like,
Hmm.
was Amy more ratchet?
Hmm.
Like, was she dressing differently? Was she talking differently? And same for David as well.
Yes.
Because I also think like one of the reasons David was like what wanted to marry Amy was also, she's made to look like this attractive girl.
Hmm.
So it's also like, yeah, she got a trophy wife in a way
Right.
as
Right.
well. So Yeah, that would have been interesting. And I also think, like, I think your theory might be true. Like, he came
Yeah.
to England to study and he went to a bar one night for the first time in his life. And then, like, Amy was bartending there. And
Yeah.
then, yeah.
Right, right. But we have to make this clear. Susan George, lovely lady, but she's not the hottest thing in the world. Let's just make this clear. Like, Amy is at least a London 7. She's a London 7.
Wow.
Even in 1971. I feel like she is not, this is not the hottest thing we've ever seen.
I mean, maybe according to that time and for English standards.
Yeah.
I don't
But,
know. She's like very textbook pretty in quotation marks.
yeah. Yeah.
Blonde hair, slim, nice tits.
Hmm.
And yeah, basically, she's good from some angles.
Yeah. From some angles, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a way to put it, right? But either way, so yeah, basically, in the film, um, there's a scene where David is like sitting in his study and Amy is like complaining, like, all you do is sit here, you never spend time with me, blah, blah, blah. And then David says, if you want to help me, how about you help clean the kitchen? How about you tell those boys to fix the garage? How about you help by making me a meal? Stuff like that. And I think that scene is interesting because it's like, there are parts of this film, a large part of this film, where we feel like David is the ultimate beta male cuck pussy, right? But he also exhibits some very toxic masculine traits from our 2024 eyes. Now in 1971, what he was saying was not uncommon for any man to say in the house, whatever. But, it's interesting because I feel like in the beginning of this film, you kind of might not like David because how he's talking to Amy and treating her almost like a, modern, like housewife slave, like trad wife on a leash. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think what he wants makes sense. It's
Hmm.
okay if he wants his own space and he wants to work. And like, that's kind of like what we have too, because you can voice it reasonably
Hmm.
and with compassion to me. So I understand.
Yeah.
But it's like with him, he's like, I think he said something like, I love you, Amy, but leave me the F alone. Something like that. Like,
Yeah.
that was kind of, yeah, he's kind of rude to her whenever he wants.
Hmm.
And then other times when he wants to goof around and, make out with her and things like that,
Yeah.
he's nice to her.
Right, right, right.
And in return, she fucks with his work. So
Yeah.
she constantly goes to his blackboard where he has like this equation and puts her gum in there
Hmm.
or deletes like a plus and draws a minus just to fuck with him.
Yeah. And it sort of comes across like childish. Like, I think one of the big issues, like I said before, Amy can come across as like hella bitchy, hella whiny, complaining, in the very beginning. Like, and there's also other things she does in the film that makes you say, and forgive me, Acty, I know you're going to hate me, but it's almost like she wanted something bad to happen to her by how she was acting to some degree. I'm sorry. I have to say it. But,
Wow. I mean, yeah, that's not good that you said that.
it's not
Because
good I said that, but you know what scene I'm talking about. We're about to get to it soon. You get what I'm saying?
yeah, but that's, I think, a very like dilemma that the modern or, not, maybe not the modern, but maybe all women have is that we want to be free, but we're still expected to act a certain way. So it's, we can't just choose either this or that.
Right,
So
right,
yeah.
right. So after that, big fight, where David says, clean the kitchen and tell those guys to fix to the garage, she goes grocery shopping. She comes back into the house. The guys outside like see her storm into the house and they're like, oh, I guess trouble's in paradise or whatever, right? And so Amy and David have like this big fight and she says something interesting. She says, you came here to England because you couldn't commit. But then David says like, commit to what? And we never get the answer to that. But then, David says like, you said that you thought you would be happier here. And then Amy says, sorry, right? I don't know. What did you think about that? What do you think David couldn't commit to?
Um, I think maybe also because like the way how David acts about his job towards Amy. I feel like he wasn't taken that seriously in his job in America.
Mhm.
And I mean, we know that he got a grant too, so maybe that kind of doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
But maybe like his colleagues were not taking him seriously,
Mhm.
and I don't know. I felt like he had like some social like problem
Right.
to me, and then he just feels better here in a foreign country where people don't know what he's doing, so he can
Mhm.
always seem like he's doing something important
Yeah.
or he's doing something that they don't even ask about. So he
Yeah.
doesn't have to like explain himself all the time.
Yeah. I don't know. There's like so many ways to interpret it. What they mean by he couldn't commit. Like couldn't commit to getting married in America, couldn't commit to, maybe David, is actually married in the U.S. but couldn't commit to divorcing his wife, so he ran off and had a bigamous relationship. I don't know. This
Um, I
this
don't know if
film,
David is that big of a playboy, but sure.
who knows? Who knows? He surprises us later. Maybe he could have surprised us before. But this film like reminds me of Casablanca because like in Casablanca we don't know exactly why Rick left America or why he doesn't want to return, but we sort of fill in the blanks. With David, I guess there's a lot of blank to fill in, but you can put in anything you want there, you know?
Yeah.
But
I mean, yeah, like you said, maybe he was just not really fitting with the American society.
yeah.
But also, I wanted to like touch to their conversation right before this.
Mhm.
Like when Amy comes out of the car, she like her pantyhose is ripped and
Mhm.
she's like looking at that and the guys check her out,
Mhm.
like watching sitting at the roof. And then she sort of like gets mad at them for looking at her. And then she goes inside and tells David that like, they were looking at me. And
Mhm.
David says like, oh, they have great taste then. And then like he asks her like, why aren't you wearing a bra? And she says,
mhm.
why should I? And things
Mm.
like that. So I feel like that's just like the dynamic I was referring to just a minute ago when you said she might have had it coming,
Mhm.
because it's like she wants to be free, but she also wants to be protected and supported by her man as
Yeah,
well.
she wants too many things. This is a problem with women. Yeah, red pill time.
How
Red
do
pill
we have,
Simon come.
how do we want too many things? That's not too many things.
That is way too many things. You can't say like, yeah, we want to be free, but we also want to be protected. That's like saying, yeah, I want to be able to like punch a guy in the face, but I want somebody to fight him for me.
No, no, of course not. But like, I don't want to wear a bra. But if someone insults me, I want my man to stand up for me.
Okay. Okay. But if a Karen attacks your man, then you don't want to do anything.
You're going there. Do you want to go to the history books? Is that what you
Uh,
want?
I'm just saying, this is the point, right? Like you're saying, yeah, we want to be able to be free to make the choice not to defend our man, but we want to be protected.
I am defending my man. Okay, full stop. And then
Okay.
what I don't want you to fight for me, but it shouldn't be like a super extraordinary thing that I'm not wearing a bra. That
Okay.
should be fine with men. And
Right.
when it's not, I should be defended. And I will also defend myself as well, obviously.
Right. Right. Okay. And it's also not too much to ask to attack a woman who physically attacks your man. Cause your man can't physically attack her back. Or
Okay.
that's too much to ask.
I'm not asking, okay, well, I'm not doing this here. I will defend you. Yes, it's not too much to ask, Simon.
Okay. But defend could be by saying, stop.
I'm not doing this here, so I don't know what you're waiting for.
All right. All right. But the scene that I was talking about where Amy, like, sort of like invited trouble to some degrees, like after she has that fight with David, she goes upstairs, takes off her shirt, and David is yelling like, close the blinds, and she walks exactly by the guys on the roof, specifically Charlie, who sees her first, and like shows her tits and like stands there, for a good, few seconds for him to get a good glance and then walks away. So it makes you feel like when you're watching this film like Amy is like playing with fire. Now you could argue like David is not doing enough to step up as a man, so of course she's gonna, seek attention or protection elsewhere. But it's like doing something like that feels like a major violation.
I mean, she was just trying to get David to be jealous because when
Hmm.
she takes her top off, she throws her t-shirt down to the first floor
Hmm.
on David, and David says like, "Don't forget to draw the curtains."
Hmm.
And yeah, I think she was just mad at David because he's not protecting her. So that was like a middle finger to him.
Yeah,
Like, if you're not protecting how the guys are checking me out, then I'm gonna like show my tits.
I see. I see.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Yeah. Uh, I feel like it's majorly wrong. To make somebody jealous, number one, is wrong in and of itself. Like, cause that just leads to negative repercussions. Hey, let me make my boyfriend, my husband jealous by flirting with some other guys. Hey, let me make my husband jealous by showing my tits to some other guys. That's the next level. Think about it
That's
in reverse.
toxic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, nobody would want that from a man, so let's not make excuses for a woman to do that. But yeah, there's a scene later where like Tom goes into the bar downtown to like have a drink and sort of like confront the guys after they sort of like messed with his car. And then there's like this scene where he's like, trying to race past the guys in the back of a pickup truck. Like there are so many things that overlap. Like rural England is just like rural Alabama. Right? These white trash guys are rolling around in pickup trucks, getting drunk and fucking with the rich folk. You know what I'm saying? But yeah,
It looks scary.
kind of looks scary. And it's like in this town, there's nothing else to do but get drunk, do some manual labor, have sex, and look at other people have sex and go gossip and stuff like that, right? But
Yeah.
this interesting part happens next. So basically, David goes downtown and he meets up with the police officer, and the cop comes with him back home to meet up with the preacher, right? The local preacher wants to invite David to the church, and when they first meet, David wants to give a donation, and the preacher doesn't even look at how much money he gets. He's like, "Thank you," and just takes the check. And then later on, David is trying to like explain to the preacher what his career is, but the preacher is sort of like not listening or paying attention. And he makes a reference to David being a scientist and scientists being responsible for many deaths because of the nuclear bomb. But David is like, hey, nobody's killed more people than Christians in the name of Jesus. And the preacher's like, fuck you say to me, boy? But what did you think about, any of those scenes?
Okay, so first of all, David going downtown and he goes into the bar and like he orders a drink and everybody's looking at him like, what is he doing? We hate him.
Hmm.
That sort of look. And then he says like, cheers, I guess. So it felt like he was trying to get on their good side, but he was
Hmm.
also a bit scared of them, but also like he was ready to like throw a punch at the same time. It was like
Hmm.
all of those combined.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah. And then about the preacher, he wasn't welcoming from the get-go. He was already a bit drunk, and then he
Hmm.
turns on like a loud music, and, he wasn't like explaining what he did. The preacher asked him, and he was sort of like, yeah, he explained it, but he was sort of like snobby and
Yeah.
sarcastic.
I disagree. I don't see David as snobby, right? I just think he's very humble about what he does because he knows most people won't grasp it, understand it, or be interested in. Everybody hates math, right? Like there's very few people you meet. Hey, what was your favorite subject in school? Nobody says math, right?
Yeah. The guy asks David, what do you do? And he says, I'm an astral mathematician. And then the guy says, never heard of it. And he says, yeah, because I just made it up.
But that could mean two things. It could mean that David is just trying to give a definition, or literally he is the very first guy. He is one of the founders of astral mathematics.
He
So,
just said, I just made it up.
but that can mean he literally just made it up. He is the first person to be practicing in this field.
I don't think it was that, but
It, it,
sure.
It can be interpreted that way. That's what I'm saying. It's like if you met Einstein. Einstein, what do? I break things apart.
It's
I'm a
just
construction worker, deconstruction worker.
the thing is, like, I'm not defending the pastor, but
Hmm.
I just think David immediately, because he was involved in religion or he was a pastor in a rural town, in a small
Uh-huh.
town, I just felt like David automatically thought he was too stupid, too involved with religion, wouldn't understand what he's doing, and then he just acted like an asshole.
I got a perfect dad joke to better analogize like David's answer of I just made it up, right? Imagine you ask Albert Einstein, what do you do? Or what do you study, Albert? And Albert says, I study what matters. Get it?
No.
Matter makes up the universe.
Oh, wow.
He's a
Okay.
physicist.
Great dad joke, yeah.
But see, it's the same, David, like scientists have that sense of humor, right? Like,
Where are the crickets?
there are sound effects here, but don't find them. Don't look for them. Anyway, so basically, David and the preacher get off to a rocky start, but David agrees to like come to the, yearly Christmas religious festival, whatever they're having. He goes upstairs with, Amy. Amy is like, you were horrible to the preacher. And he's like, no, I wasn't. I was just giving him a taste of his own medicine. And he goes into the closet to like undress and he sees that the cat is dead, hanging from the string that turns on the light. And he doesn't say anything to Amy. This is the interesting part. He just like sits in the chair and lets Amy go to the closet and sees the cat there, and then she screams. He locks all the doors, while Amy is saying like it was them, fire them, fire those guys, right? And, he's like, no. And, yeah, so he's like, I don't know if it was them. Essentially, the fight continues to the next day, and he still can't believe it was them. It could be anybody. What did you think about those scenes?
Yeah, I was mad at David for not saying anything. Like, if you did that to me,
Hmm.
I'd be like, what is it? What? And then if you didn't say it to me, I would be like mad at you. Like,
Yeah.
why'd you let me see that?
Hmm.
It could have
Hmm.
been one of us that is traumatized. I didn't have to be traumatized
Yeah.
at that point. And yeah, it also felt like he was very emotional, like a
Hmm.
softie, how the guys were saying. And he was just like so traumatized about seeing the cat like that, which is horrible, understandable.
Hmm.
But it's not like how, the manhood works.
Hmm.
So yeah, and I really got like hear Amy wanting him to fire them because she was like, I know it was them. And
Hmm.
sort of like when you're in a rural town, you do know people well. And
Yeah.
you know who's trouble, who's capable of what. And
Yeah.
he was just very American. He was like,
Innocent till proven guilty. We need to see the
exactly.
evidence.
Yeah, he's like, you don't have evidence. And I just felt like that was because he was scared of them a little bit.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, like David coming into this town, like with this whole, like, I think he came into this town with the notion like the British are civilized. They would never, even though they're exterminators and drunkards and rat procurers, they would never do something as heinous as break into my home and murder my cats by strangulation. Like, David has a lot of like preconceived notions, I think, about the Brits, right? He's still not getting it. Like he thought he left America and left, Georgia, South Carolina, Kansas, Arkansas behind. And he literally landed in like where Eminem grew up in 8 Mile, like the trailer, like the trailer park of the UK. Like he doesn't realize like everything outside of London is like hillbilly town.
Yeah. Do you think David was trying to be like British, but how he thought British people were?
No, yes and no. Yes and no. I think, you know, if David exhibits some of these toxic masculine traits, it's also possible if this movie was placed in like Africa or Latin America or Asia, he would have also exhibited some racist traits as well, right? So he wouldn't have been as forgiving seeing the dead cat. He would have been like, I know them niggas did it. I know them niggas. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If he was in Congo with his Congolese queen, you know what I mean? He would have been fired those boys. But yeah, because he's in Britain, he's like, oh, these fellow white men would never. White men don't do such things.
Yeah. It was sort of like very off-putting the way he was just like, whatever, it's just the cat is dead. We don't have to really look about who did it.
Uh huh.
And he said things like, maybe it was just someone walking by. And like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, he's literally foolish. And I think this is the part of the film where everybody's like, David. You know what I mean? Because even though we don't see who killed the cat, it's very obvious because there are scenes when David isn't there or, you know, there's parts where we're seeing what the other people are saying behind David's back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's one of the frustrating parts about this film. I feel like it might have been more mysterious, more psychologically thrilling if we only got David's perspective. But because we know so much about what's happening around him and David doesn't know, it's kind of frustrating for us, the audience, because we're like, how can you not see it? And he's like, I'm literally not there.
I mean, I think in case of the cat, he just didn't care about it because he
Mm,
was annoyed by the way Amy was always looking for the cat, like yelling
yeah,
kitty, kitty around the house.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I think he just didn't care about it, and that's why. It's
exactly.
because it's not like David was a stupid person. He was very smart.
Kind of smart, because after the cat dies, right, you know, the guys are working outside in the garage, and Amy is like bickering at David, do something, fire the guys, whatever. And so then David says, I'm gonna set them in a trap. Watch this, Amy. And he tells the guys, hey, come inside, help me set up the bear trap that I bought, that we saw at the beginning of the film, right? And help me put it on the wall, right? And so these guys are working on the bear trap while David is like talking to them and stuff like that. They almost snap their hands off. Amy comes in there with like tea for everybody, and she also puts the milk that the cat used to drink like on the tray as well to sort of like remind David and send a signal to everybody, right? But the guys invite David hunting, and David says, "Yeah, I'll come hunting," and he doesn't really catch them in anything, right? He doesn't make them see any sort of any sort of hint that he knows or he suspects them of killing the cat. It was like he totally let Amy down, and she's very depressed about that. So yeah, a few days later, you know, he goes hunting with them and stuff like that, and some horrible things happen. But before we jump to that, what did you think about the whole "I'm gonna set them in a trap" scene?
I felt like when, he wanted them to set up the bear trap, they almost snap their hands, but then they don't and they just open it and it does look like very dangerous machine. Obviously
Hmm.
it's used to kill a big animal,
Yeah.
right? And I think when he saw them like setting up the trap without any fear really,
Hmm.
I thought he was intimidated. And
Yeah.
then he sort of thought that they were cool in a way
Mm.
that they were manly, and Amy always complained how David didn't do any like manual labor around the house
Hmm.
and they had to hire help. So I thought maybe he was trying to like be buddies with them in a
Hmm.
way that to increase his manlyhood
Hmm.
and, get some of that, I don't know, English gunk in his gooch.
Trying to get some English masculinity in him.
Yeah,
Well, the
that's
first
that's
thing he
how
had
it
to,
felt like because it's just like intimidation, but also like somewhat admiration.
I see. Well, the first thing he would have to do is like mess up his teeth and wear a pauper's hat. Because these guys can't dress and god damn none of their smiles look like they could chew food. They look like they grew up chewing rocks. British people look like they nibble on pebbles for snacks. Like, what is up with their teeth? It's insane.
Yeah, and also, yeah, they can chug beer in 2 seconds.
Yeah, their biology is different. Like there's a whole different evolutionary biology to British people that allows them to like somehow maintain like the world's third largest economy at the same time. They've never heard the word orthodontics. Like there's something in there that makes that very unique. That's a whole different set of genomes and phenotypes functioning together that are out of this world.
Wow. I mean, yeah. Here's a fun fact. Did you
Hmm.
know that the oldest man in the world is from Britain?
Wow, wow. And here's another fun fact. Did you know that the the oldest man in the world also lived on whiskey and rye?
Is that true?
I can assume if he's from Britain, he's one of those old men who's just been chugging
Yeah.
gin and tonics and listening to speeches of Churchill on repeat. Uh,
Yeah. They asked him what his secret was, and he said, I don't know.
I don't know, but what I do know is that these Packies need to go home.
Wow.
Ah, the key to a long life: racism and beer.
Wow. Okay. No.
I'm sorry.
No, don't do that, guys.
Anyway, so yeah, the guys take David hunting, right? And there's like this intense scene because these guys keep on like pointing guns at each other the entire time, and I really thought at that point like somebody was gonna like blow David's head off, or there was gonna be like this intense scene when David is like picking off people like Rambo in the jungle because he's being hunted by these like crazy Brits and stuff like that. But yeah, so he's left there with the gun in the field while the other guys like spread out. But secretly, they all go back to David's house while he's in the field looking like a duck, trying to shoot ducks or quails or whatever. And so basically, Charlie goes to the house. Amy is there, and Charlie says, "Can I come in?" And Amy lets him in, right? And so Charlie comes on to Amy very strongly, and he says, like, "Don't you want me?" And they kiss. Amy accepts the kiss, but after she accepts the kiss, she says no. And she keeps saying no. And eventually, Charlie like slaps her and, they kiss again. He pushes her on the couch. He says no, she says no again. And he's like, "Don't make me do it, woman," like putting her hand in her face. I'm sorry. And then he like takes off his pants and there's like this cool flashback scene like flashing, showing David in the field with the gun and, Charlie over his wife, right? And at the scene, like when, Charlie enters, Amy, right? At the same time, David sort of gets his masculinity back by shooting a quail in the air and it falls into the bush, right? And we see David like put the quail back into the bush after he picks it up. But meanwhile, Amy is getting like her shit pounded in by Charlie. And Charlie smashes Amy, but then the other guys he works with show up and they're basically telling Charlie like get up off of her. I think they pointed the gun at him, right? Did they point the gun at Charlie?
Yeah, there was one other guy,
Uh
and
huh.
he came in and he pointed the gun at Charlie, and then
Uh huh.
Charlie like shakes his head no,
Uh huh.
but he has the gun, so he has to
Yeah.
let him do it.
Yeah. So Charlie, I think, holds her down while he does it. Right?
Yeah.
So one of the other guys points the gun at Charlie after he forced himself on Amy, and the other guy forces himself on Amy too, and then she's like, "No, no, no," like she can't take it. And so, yeah, what did you think about that scene, which is the most famous scene from this film?
Oh yeah, that is intense. So first of all, when they first go to the shooting range, like, or the mountains, I guess,
Hmm.
I was kind of sleepy at that time because it's like 1 hour into the movie and nothing really happened. It's just like these two fighting and then the people in the town bugging them.
Slow burn, baby.
Yeah, it's a slow burn. And I was like, oh my God, like, when is it coming? And then it came.
Oh
Somebody
yeah.
came.
Well, somebody came.
Wow. And I have a lot of problems with this, rape scene because it's like so in the middle. At one time, Amy is looking like she is wanting to do it, and then she's
Hmm.
screaming, and it looks like her face is in pain. But then she says, "Hold me." It's like, why is it in the middle? Like, is it that or the other? For
Mm.
me, I would say this is sexual assault. and unwanted penetration. But it's like, why did they do it like that? And it just, to me, felt, obviously because of the time of the movie as well, 1971, it just felt extremely male gaze, extremely like, you know, woman enjoy R word type of feeling it gave me, this whole scene. And I did not
Right.
like that.
Right. I can understand how you can feel that way. Absolutely. I just feel like the rape scene here is obviously rape, right? I would not even say that it's gray. I think it's kind of obvious. But the way it's shot, I think is very interesting, and I think it's the most beautiful metaphor for how people interact with evil around them, or evil that's even done upon them. Because we live in this world where we see so much evil that happens, and so many people are ambivalent to it, or they give in to it because they don't want to fight back. Now, some people might watch this film and say, Amy should have kept fighting. You know, nobody's going to rape me. I'm going to keep fighting until I die. Stuff like that, right? But a lot of people aren't like that. A lot of people really ain't built like that. You get what I'm saying? And Amy, I feel like she came from this place where law didn't exist, rules didn't really exist, except the social norms that sort of kept everything functioning to some degree. But when it came time for the savagery of man to appear and evil and injustice to happen to other people, Amy, just like everybody else in this town, sort of goes along to get along. You get what I'm saying? So I feel like with that rape scene is showing like a lot of us, a lot of people, you know, they're not going to want to fight back against the harm that they see around them, even if it's done to them. And that I think will show more in the film later. But yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, of course. You cannot expect everyone to fight. Some people go into shock. Some people think they are weak and, they will get hurt the more they fight. And the guy, like Charlie, he was a big dude.
Hmm.
And, like, he was very, tall and things like that. So I do think, like, Amy didn't have a chance to fight him. I don't know, unless, maybe she bit him or something. But I don't know, like, we cannot blame Amy for not fighting. I feel like that's, like, unnecessary.
Hmm.
And, it's just like, yeah, I guess it shows the sort of, like, manly rage and
Hmm.
also feminine submission.
Yeah.
And yeah, this just makes me so uncomfortable. And also, like I said before, like it just gives that illusion like, oh, all women secretly want this
Yeah,
because she showed her tits before. Like, no.
I get what you're saying. I don't think a sane person, I don't think any sane person would look at that and say, yeah, she wanted that to happen, especially when the other dude got on top of her, right? It's just Charlie was this guy that she knew for a long time, even though Charlie was doing something horribly wrong. Uh, she was like, I can't fight back. What more can I do against this man who has physically overpowered me? I'm all alone. I'm afraid. And my man, I don't even feel like can protect me. What else can I do but to give in? Right? And
Yeah.
like I was saying, I think that rape scene is a metaphor for so many other things in life, right? Like right now, we're having the election in the U.S. Nobody likes either side, but people are still going to vote for the lesser of two evils, whatever you think that is, right? And yeah, so you might really be saying, damn, I'm going to cast this vote for Kamala, knowing she might continue to kill like Palestinian children and sell out our country to the richest corporations and make Americans even more poor and destitute. Well, fuck it. I'm just going to give in to evil because what more can I do? I can't resist. Resistance can only do so much. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. And I think like, yeah, in here they just show it sort of in terms of, a masculine person, a man and a woman.
Right. And I think even to some degree, you could say Charlie got raped. And I'm not gonna try to stretch it out too far. I'm not reaching too far, but I'm gonna say this. We know Charlie kind of really loves Amy from what he said earlier in the film and also at the ending as well, right? He sort of does something to like kind of save her at the end, right? And so when the other guy comes and like rapes Amy and then the other guy stands up and smiles at Charlie, he looks away. Like he can't even look at him because he feels violated because secretly he did that to Amy because he wants that girl back. You know what I mean? And it's sort of like he got violated too. This, which is interesting, you know, because David is the one who really should be the one that we're saying like got violated. But there can be some sympathy for Charles too, because he's another person in this world who just gives in to evil, right? Because that's the easiest way to get along, you know?
It's very hard for me to, forgive Charlie's character, forgive Charlie for what he did. And
Hmm.
I don't think he got, assaulted. But yeah, I mean, I guess you can see sort of like how violence and evil is layered in
Hmm.
that scene, because even though Charlie was doing something bad, overcomes the other guy who's doing
Hmm.
something bad to Amy plus Charlie.
Yeah.
So we can say like it's layered and it has different like ways that it can show. But at the same time, I don't think like, I think Charlie had a crush on her, but like
Hmm.
he doesn't know her. Like they were probably together like before many years ago, and for him, I just felt like she was a pretty girl that she
Hmm.
wanted to be with, and not like he had a great emotional connection or anything like that, at least as far as we know.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I think, though, it's probably well understood that Amy and Charlie probably grew up together. They probably knew each other since they were literal, adolescents, children. So I think they knew each other very well, though I would disagree with that. But either way, David comes home and he sees his wife in bed kind of crying, but he's actually more upset about what he went through today because he's like pissed off. And he's like, these guys left me out there in the field. I'm so mad. I'm going to fire them now. And Amy is like, oh, now you're going to fire them, right? While they were leaving you alone, they were tending to home. She sort of sends a message about what happened, but David is so blinded in his rage, he doesn't care. And when he tries to like lay up and kiss Amy, she's having flashbacks of like the rape that happened to her with Charles and stuff like that. So the next day he goes and fires the guys, in his whimper voice, like, I need you out of my house. And he pays them. After they rape his wife, he pays them, like making him like the ultimate cuck. But he
Oh my
doesn't know.
god.
He doesn't know what happened, right? And that's the frustrating thing about the part of the film. Um, yeah. Any comments about that when David and Amy remet?
I mean, David was just like blind. Obviously, like I'm not expecting him to, like I'm not blaming him for not knowing that his wife was raped. Obviously, he
Hmm.
cannot know that. But I just felt like, for example, I just realized that after Amy, got assaulted, she started smoking. She
Mm.
wasn't smoking before. David was smoking,
Hmm.
but then we see Amy smoking in bed.
Hmm.
And, yeah, she says certain things and David is complaining on and on about like his day and how he got demasculated. And, yeah, like, and then he also gets mad at Amy for doing the milk thing that she did as
Hmm.
well. So yeah, I don't know. It just feels like he's blind. And then once again, he's trying to like get on with Amy, and
Mm.
then he's being nice.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. He sort of turns it off and on. I feel like his love language is gentle neck nibbling, slight pulling of hair. It's nice to see in 1970 David was eating pussy. There's a lot of allusion to David loving to lick the clit. So that's good to know. I feel like David was sort of ahead of his time, and to some degree maybe Amy too, because I don't even think dick sucking back then was kind of popular, or at least like it was kind of taboo. You know what I mean?
At least not in the car.
At least not in the car. But them country girls, they had a lot of practice, being out there in the fields with the
Wow.
cousins, with the uncles.
You, stop.
But yeah. Essentially though, David and Amy, they end up going to the church events. That's like the big gathering in town. And she's having flashbacks constantly of like the memory of the rape. Plus the other guys are there, which had to be just like horrible for her. Like all of her attackers are just there clowning in the background, and she can't just, have a moment of peace. And the the lawman in town gets on stage and starts doing magic tricks. And I think there's a metaphor there, right? Like the guy who's supposed to be protecting the town is essentially sort of like a joke.
But that was the pastor, not the
Oh, I'm sorry.
priest.
I'm sorry. You're right. You're right.
I mean,
Well, the
there's a
preacher.
message there too, I guess.
Well, okay. If it's the pastor, then the pastor is sort of kind of like a joke. He's not preaching about morality. He's not, telling people to be better to their neighbors, not covet your neighbor's wife. The Ten Commandments. He's like ripping newspapers until like you notice that they're not really ripped or something like that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think for me, like when you see the scene of gathering in the church, it's like everyone came here to drink. Like everyone is drinking, everyone is pouring wine, and then they're letting like the kids watch the show, magician show, which is like done by the vicar, right? And it's like nobody takes religion seriously. Like it's
Mhm.
just a show to say, they have morals, but actually nobody cares about it. Everybody drinks, everybody's a drunk, and everybody like hurts each other.
Mhm.
So yeah, it doesn't really mean anything to them. It's just a facade.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that too. And I think that's how religion is like where I grew up too, right? Like I'm sure there are people that really, really believe in Jesus, but they really just need community. They really just need, a place to belong. Or this is the only thing that they have to do in town, which is be all together and gossip and get drunk and, sing and clap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, essentially, while they're there, right, Amy's really not having a good time. The preacher is making her have flashbacks with her horrible jokes and the sounds and the noises all around her. Janice comes up to David all up in his face and she says, "Hi, David." And he's like, "Hello. Hello, 13-year-old child. I know you are legal here in the UK, but I will not be doing that today."
Well, he's sort of like smiling back at her too.
He's smiling back, but then he like lights a cigarette, sort of like to awkwardly say like, I'm trying to do something else besides talk to you and catch a R. Kelly charge, a Roman Polanski charge,
I
a
mean,
Woody Allen charge.
wow, okay. Well, I just think like whenever they have that encounters, like she looks at him with admiration and sort of like with a crush. And
Hmm.
then he's not doing anything. He's not acting on it, but I think he just like smiles at her
Hmm.
because he likes the attention that he gets from pretty girls.
Mm, maybe. I'll let that rest. I'll let that rest. But Janice, because she doesn't get attention from the smartest guy in town, she ends up hooking up with and walking outside with the village idiot. She ends up going outside with Henry Niles, and her brother is like tagging behind, and then her brother comes up and tells her father, right, that Henry Niles took Janice, and we don't know where she is. But her brother is just as pussy as David is. You get what I'm saying? Because he could have done something, but instead he just ran to daddy. What a bitch. Uh,
Wow. I mean, her brother is very young.
uh-huh.
So yeah.
I mean, he's very young, but he could have done something. You know what I mean? But yeah, essentially the father of Henry Niles gets beat up by the father of Janice, and he's like, "Where's Janice?" And he's like, I don't know." So the guys from the garage who are fixing David's house, Charlie and the gang, they're looking outside trying to find him, they're yelling and screaming, but they can't find him, and basically Henry Niles and Janice are like in a barn somewhere trying to get it on, right? But when Henry hears that people are screaming for Janice, he holds Janice from the back until like she suffocates, essentially holding her by the throat, trying to close her mouth, but she ends up dying. So then Henry Niles is like running wild through the woods after, David and Amy left the house. They're driving in their car and serendipitously, they run into each other, right? Like David runs over Henry Niles. And a part of me was like, oh, that was kind of predictable and kind of like silly to put in the plot, but hey, I guess it works to bring everything full circle. Um, but yeah, any comments on any of those things?
So just to like, timestamp, I was kind of getting sleepy in the 1 hour mark.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the rape scene happened and it made me like anxious. So it made me wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And then like now it's 20 minutes later and now it's finally getting to the like juicy part. So
Mm-hmm.
you gotta like hold on for 20 more minutes after the 1 hour mark.
Yeah,
And then it will
yeah,
get better.
yeah.
I promise.
Essentially, that first, the first hour of the film definitely could have been snipped down to make a more tighter,
Yeah.
concise film. Maybe more dialogue on the background of who
Yeah.
the characters were.
But
Uh, yeah,
after this part, the rest of the movie is very like action filled.
yeah, yeah. The
And
curve goes upwards very quickly, and it,
yeah.
picks up a lot of steam and energy. So yeah, basically, after David runs into Henry Niles, he takes him home and he tries to call the hospital, the cops, nobody's answering. So he ends up calling the most important place in the town, which is what?
The police. No, the bar.
The bar, yes, he calls the bar. And guess who's at the bar? The father of Janice, Tom, who doesn't know that Janice is dead yet, right? And Charlie and the gang, right? So they call the bar. Bartender says Henry Niles is at David's house, and the guys get all their bottles from the bar and load up their guns and hop in the back of the pickup truck. So they go in the truck to David's house and they pull up there and they break into the house essentially and they see that Henry Niles is on the couch and David is like, you guys are going to kill him. You're going to beat him. We're going to give him to the police. And these guys are like, no, we're not going to give him to the police. We want to take care of him ourselves. And they're like, David's like, I'm not going to let you take him. This is my house. I'm going to stand by my rules. Now get out of my house. And Charlie is looking at him dead and closely. And Amy is standing behind him on the stairs. Charlie looks at Amy. Amy doesn't say anything, but Charlie's like, come on, boys, let's leave. Right? And they essentially leave the house. What did you think about those scenes?
Yeah, just to take it back a little bit, I felt like Niles. I really felt bad for Niles, really, because that story just felt too familiar. Because there are just a lot of stories in Turkey in rural parts where people who are mentally incapable or mentally sort of like like that are accidentally killing people, and that's what happened to him. He accidentally killed the girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt really bad for him. And also, they never get the help that they need in
Yeah.
these towns as well, because he might have had maybe like a very high level of autism or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like you said, the way like, David hit him with this car, it was predictable. And at that point, I was also again thinking David is acting very American because, yeah, Amy was like, I don't want him in this house because, he is crazy. He might have done something. And yeah, David just sort of doesn't care and does what he believes is the best.
No, she says explicitly, he asks her, you don't care? And she says, I don't. And then David's like, all right, but I do. I care. Then a twinkle comes in his eye, like a rainbow flies over his head.
Yeah, I mean, wow. If I got sexually assaulted like Amy a day ago, I wouldn't care either. Like these people just, rape me and I don't want to get into more trouble. I don't want more trauma. I don't want more rape,
Mm-hmm.
basically. So I understand her like not caring about it, wanting to get rid of Niles. And
Going,
because David didn't know any of this, he sort of saw her like insipid,
you
like
think
someone
so?
who's just like not fair and who's
Yeah,
just backwards.
I got you. I think that all sort of like hit me at the very end of the film. Like, oh, this is the story of taming the savages. right? Like, in the whole thing sort of made sense when David, the American, is sort of like kind of doing the right thing by saying, I'm going to stand up for the weak, the vulnerable, right? When it's clear and obvious. And this is the thing, like throughout the film, we are looking at David like the weak man because he's not standing up for his wife, the person that every man swears that they'll defend her honor until they die and stuff like that, right? But it's because David never knew that his wife got violated that he never stood up. You get what I'm saying? But when we see that David has the option or the opportunity to stand up for what's right, he kind of does it, by any means necessary. And that made me realize, okay, this film is sort of like no different than, Indiana Jones going into Africa and like, setting the savages right. You know what I mean? Don't throw the girl into the volcano. you know?
I mean, I know it's not the same level, but when he should have stood by her and defended her, he didn't in the
Uh,
movie. And I know it's not the same with like, sexual assault, but I feel like that's why, Amy never told him because she already thought that maybe, first of all, she was trying to forget the trauma. Second of all, she was not trying to create like a rumor or gossip or make herself seem dirty.
hmm
And then also she might have thought that David might not care, or also the guys who did it might not get justice as well.
Right.
But yeah, I just feel like it's so like weird watching David defending Niles while he's so blind to
Yeah.
the actual tragedy of the story.
Yeah. It's it does make you feel a bit weird, but it also makes you, I feel like, feel a bit proud, low key, because it does show that David is not some weakling who will give in to the evil of the world around him. And I think about this Martin Luther King quote all the time. Well, not all the time, but just like times when it's related. Martin Luther King said, evil only exists in this world when good men do nothing about it,
Mm.
right? So yeah, David in this case is finally like taking a stand, saying that if this guy is guilty of murder, right, he should be judged by law, right? And technically in this case, like, Henry did commit the worst sin, uh, murder, but once again, David doesn't know. There's always this, lack of knowledge that David has, uh, that still sort of that guides his character, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I guess. But it's also like you said, he was trying to train the savages,
hmm
but it's also like he became a savage as well on his
yeah,
way. It's not like
like,
he was just talking his way through it.
yeah. Like he does go beast mode. Like we see David grow like 3 inches taller. Uh, his swagger hits a bit different. Uh, David he gets a fade by the end.
Yeah, he definitely gets more charismatic. I would say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So essentially, like the guys, leave the house. The Charlie and the gang, and Tom as well. They leave the house, but they get really pissed, and they're also getting more and more drunk, and they start breaking all the windows and stuff like that. And Amy is like, uh, we have to give them Niles. You got to do something. And she is like not trusting him, right? Because she can't believe that he's going to be able to fight back all these guys, right? And the cop comes, and the cop is trying to like calm down the guys in the back, but essentially the cop even gets his guts blown out by Tom, the father of Janice, right? And when the cop dies, I felt like, oh shit, it's
Shit's
really
hit the
gone.
fan.
Yeah, shit has really hit the fan, right? And I feel like they broke that thin glass that was there that gave this town any semblance of law and order. And it just showed what it really was. Mob rule, mob justice, lynch mentality. You get what I'm saying? But what did you think
Yeah.
of that scene?
I thought it was funny a little bit because they weren't actually trying to kill the guy, but
hmm
the police officer wanted the gun from
hmm
Tom, and then Tom wouldn't give it, so they were fighting with it back and forth, and then Tom clicked on the trigger, maybe
Yeah.
possibly accidentally, and shot the guy.
hmm
because they were sort of afraid of the Major, right?
Yeah.
When they were in the pub before, when Major says like that's enough, they really do quit it and go away.
Yeah.
And I think they were also worried that they killed a police officer because they were like, oh, now we're fucked.
Yeah.
Now, like, we have to kill all of them and hide it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was sort of like also, their evil sort of went to 100.
Yeah. It
Like,
was.
yeah, maybe it was like 50%, and then it just went to 100,
Yeah.
and they just started like going more and more onto David and Amy.
Yeah. These guys were just ready to rock after that. They're like, fuck it. We in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so basically, David is, barricading the house and locking all the doors, telling Amy, turn on the lights, turn off the lights, run upstairs, hide Niles. She doesn't want to, be upstairs with Niles because Niles is like panicking and going crazy and stuff like that. But David is like downstairs sneaking around, putting vats of oil on the stove, while Tom and the crew are like throwing rats and rocks inside and stuff. I mean, David hears Henry upstairs attacking Amy, and he comes upstairs, slaps Henry in the face, and then does like a Dikembe finger in his finger wave, no, no, no. And then he tells Amy, open the attic. And then they kind of like force Henry in the attic. What did you think about all of those chaotic scenes?
Oh my God, that was crazy.
Yeah,
Obviously, at this point, like you are on the edge of your seat and you're just wondering what's going to happen because I felt like David also, like, still at this point, Amy is like still saying, let's give them Niles. How are you going to do it? You cannot fight 5 men on your own. And I
yeah.
felt like David also didn't know how he was going to do it, but he
Hmm.
just had to do it.
Hmm.
So he did it,
Yeah.
basically. So, or he was trying to do it, and it just, I was thinking, this is where they got Home Alone. Because they saw this movie and said, let's make this into a kid's movie. Because it felt like, he was planning these little smart tricks
Yeah.
to, do them dirty and, yeah, like sort of conquer them from the inside out. And there, I was for David. Obviously, I wanted them to, survive. And I was sort of getting annoyed with Amy. Because,
Yeah.
girl, it's like, too late. Just support your man.
But I understand where Amy was coming from though, because once again, she had not been protected all this time for her standards by him. And so now she's going to trust her literal life in the hands of this guy who literally she might have just married like last week, right? Against these guys she's known all her life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's like, it's too far ahead at this point. Like, her
Hmm.
bickering is not doing anything.
Hmm. I get what you're saying. I get what you mean. I mean, there was that scene when Tom is like, come outside, Amy. You can come with us. You'll be okay. We just want Henry. And so Amy's like, I'm going to go with them. And David's like, you want to go, bitch? Go. And so she tries to walk through the door. And then David goes pimp mode. And he grabs the broad and smacks her across the face. Slow-mo. Ah! We see like spittle fly out of her mouth and her blonde hair twists. Her neck almost snaps because David put the hand of God on her.
Wow, yeah. And like that's when he explains to her, like, it's too late now. They killed the cops, so if they come inside, they're gonna kill us all.
Yeah,
And then it sort of hits him, which is like, once again, this is what I mean by like anti-feminism or misogyny. It's like, he has to explain things to her, but the way they made it, it doesn't feel like she can't think about it because of her trauma, but she just is stupid and she's bickering all the time.
yeah. That's like I said, big fault of the film. When Amy gets slapped, low key, you're kind of actually happy David does it to some
Yeah.
degree, and that's the fault of the film. It's not the fault of the audience, right? Unless you're like that sexist man who likes seeing women getting slapped on film. The thing is, like Amy, from my perspective, it felt like she wasn't really honest with David. She didn't tell him about the assault. She didn't tell him how she was really feeling, not protected by David and all that sort of stuff. Plus, on top of that, if you still remember the beginning of the scene with her acting wild and erratic and, erasing his equations and messing up his time, you might feel like, damn, somebody should have been checked Amy. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, what you're saying is they should have had open communication, but I don't think that was a thing back in the 70s
Yeah,
with couples, I would say. So yeah,
yeah,
it was just normal, like non-communicative marriage.
yeah. But basically after that, after David slaps some sense into Henry Niles and then Amy, his house is in order and now he can fight the intruders. And essentially he uses like a, con- an assortment of traps basically to, attack the guys and trap the guys. He's like throwing hot grease in the face of the intruders and tying them up to shards of glass through the window panes and stuff like that. And when Tom tries to get into the house, right, basically David is able to knock him back and make him shoot off his own foot. And he goes into shock. And then the other guys break into his house, but David is able to fight them off and basically like beat them up one by one. But, you know, as he's about to face Charlie and have a one-on-one with Charlie, Charlie and David hear Amy upstairs and she's getting attacked by one of the other guys. And it was basically the guy that raped her before after Charlie did, but by gunpoint, right? And so Charlie is upstairs. He comes up there and David as well. And they're both looking at the guy and the guy is saying to Charlie, take David downstairs and let's finish this off like we did. And, Charlie says, I bet. And he blows his friend's brains out. Blows him to smithereens. And then David starts fighting with Charlie. They wrestle all the way downstairs. And Charlie gets his shit clapped up in the bear trap. And he dies. What did you think about that scene?
I thought that was a very interesting scene because, yeah, like when they go upstairs to save Amy, first of all, like it's interesting that Charlie would go upstairs without killing David.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then they're facing the other guy and Amy is basically seeing her previous rapist protect her from her current rapist. And her husband is there watching it. So it's like so weird. It's a
Yeah.
mind fuck.
Yeah.
And also like the guy says like, take him down, like take David down and when I'm done with her, I will call you and you can come and do your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then like even though he could have gotten a way out, he could have killed David, he could have also had sex with Amy, he doesn't, accept that because I guess he loves Amy, quote unquote. But that was definitely like a very interesting dynamic, like Amy seeing herself being protected by Charlie.
I don't know whether Charlie killing the other guy is Charlie finally standing up to the evil in his world and saying like, maybe I've made some mistakes, but this is my chance to make it right by killing my friend. Or if that's just the evil encompassing, Charlie so much that he's just like, no, I'm selfish. I want this woman to myself. So I'm going to kill you. Then I'm going to kill David. Then I'm going to probably, rape my ex-girlfriend again. You get what I'm saying? I don't know exactly how to feel about that, but that was one of the most interesting dynamics in the film, right? This film would have been great with just the Charlie, David, Amy love triangle with the gang as the background. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's the second one.
Oh,
And
you thought he would do the
because,
second one?
yeah, because the guys are like, some guys, I mean, not all guys, but yeah, they be like assaulting women and, treating women badly. And then once it's about the girl that they love, they're like all of a sudden proud, protective people.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense. Then why did you rape her?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just
Well,
like using your, masculine violence
it's about
and then
ownership,
imagining that you're some hero and you are not.
But it's about ownership for Charlie, right? Like,
Yeah, and no one should own anyone.
Right. Right. I think nobody should, but the fact is that people did. Up until very recently, your wife was literally your property, right? So at this time when this film was made, I believe in the UK and the United States, women couldn't even like buy homes by themselves by law. You couldn't open a bank account by yourself, have a credit card by yourself. So they were like, at this time, yeah, the idea of rape was definitely wrong and taboo because rape has always been, or for a long time been illegal. But the idea of showing ownership and dominance over a woman was still very prevalent.
Yeah, that's why, I have mixed feelings about this movie because
Hmm.
it also reflects the time as well. And I cannot really criticize that because it's not done in 2024.
Right, right. Well, they did make a remake a few years ago and they put it in Mississippi, which I do not appreciate. Okay. Don't bring that ghetto British culture to our nation.
Wow.
But, yeah, essentially, David, he feels like, yeah, I got them all. He walks outside. He walks outside like Ash Ketchum after catching all the Pokemon and thinking he really just did it all and he just is the baddest man on planet Earth. And as he walks inside, one of the other guys who still survived jumps on him and is like about to beat his ass. Uh, and he tells Amy to go get the gun because she's like standing above them as they're fighting. Amy is sort of hesitant. And then, the last words that David says are like, shoot him, Amy, shoot him. And so then Amy like blows his brains out. And, basically, David gets up, he gets Henry Niles from the attic. He looks at Amy and says, are you okay? You fine? He's like, I'll be back now. And so he drives Henry and, the final scene is Henry saying, I don't know my way home. And, David says, I don't know my way home either. Neither do I. And they drive off into like the misty night to have, gay sex. What did you think of the ending?
At the end, David's like mannerism is so funny because he
Mhm.
acts like, I just finished my shift.
Yeah.
Time for me to go to sleep. Like he does this every night, and I guess like as the viewers as well, I felt satisfied for him. I felt
Hmm.
happy for him
Hmm.
because, like I said, I didn't think he also believed in himself before, but
Hmm.
he just was like, I have to do it, even if I die doing it,
Yeah.
because there's no other way. And yeah, he just went with it. So you do feel like proud for him,
Yeah.
I would say. I don't know like that much about like the last conversation, between Niles and David.
Yeah.
Is it because I was thinking, is it because of just like what everything that happened tonight that he's not going to return home to Amy? Is it because he's gonna, I don't know, divorce her? Is it because of like how in before when Amy said like you don't know how to commit and he wanted to escape America maybe? And
Yeah.
was he referencing to that? So I was like confused a little bit about what that meant.
The
What do
thing
you think?
is, the thing is, David knew. I don't know where home is either, but I know it's not here. I'm going back home. I'm not going to get extradited. I just caught 4 bodies. I'm going back to Texas. Or even worse, even worse, David doesn't realize, he probably committed like 4 capital felonies in this foreign nation. He still thinks he's like in Massachusetts where you can like blow somebody's head off for like accidentally putting their right pinky into your doorway. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't realize like, yeah, you can't just kill people that break into your house in the UK, like in a lot of other countries. Like, only America has like this standard where we can stand our ground, castle doctrine, all this sort of stuff. So David is kind of like in a daze. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, because yeah, he just committed like heinous crimes. But it's okay, it's rural.
It's a real part.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. But I the thing about the ending, it feels so cathartic. It feels like you watched your son grow up into a man because this person who we felt like at the beginning was kind of dweeby, nerdy, incelish. actually turns out to be an upright, moral man. Now, does he have some negative traits that are respondent to his time? Yes. But overall, I feel like David is actually a male role model to some degree.
Uh,
What do you think?
I think like all of this happening and then David still not knowing about Amy's rape, it just leaves me in a bit of like a conundrum because I cannot feel that, oh, he grew up way. Yes, I do feel happy because they survived, but at the same time, I still feel bitter about David
Hmm.
or towards David. Yeah, because it's like he's so proud of him for protecting, his wife, but then also like he doesn't know what happened.
Hmm.
So I do think it was like very testosterone filled
Yeah.
in that sense, like the whole action scenes.
Hmm.
And in the back of my head, I was still thinking about like how Amy was thinking and, her being raped and things like that.
Yeah.
And yet she was still alone, left alone in a house full of dead bodies of her rapists. So yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah. Do you think they gave Amy some agency back as a woman, some power back as a woman by having her kill the last bad guy?
Um, it didn't feel like that
No.
because even then, yeah, like, David did the right thing, but David was telling her to shoot him.
Yeah, possibly. Like she gives this look of horror on her face, and I think it's because like she killed somebody she knew since the first grade, like somebody she did her A levels with. You know, the guy she probably had her first snuggle with, Schnog.
Yeah.
I just killed Claymore.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I don't know. Yeah, I guess probably. And also she was shocked, so she couldn't really move.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. She couldn't move. She was shocked, but I felt like that was an attempt. Like this movie is making an attempt of saying something about feminism and the ways of the world and women's autonomy. It's making an attempt by having Amy show her tits at the very beginning. It's making an attempt when Janice is trying to be like Amy, the girl trying to break out of her small town. It's making an attempt when Amy gives the last kill shot on the bad guy, but it doesn't execute because there's a fundamental problem with Amy's character, how she's written, how she acts, and also David's character as well. There are some flaws in this film that don't make those points land, but you can notice that those points are in the film, I would say.
Yeah, and for me, at least like sort of what I got as the main idea from the movie was like no matter which country you're from, no matter how educated and fancy you might be, no matter like, how righteous you might be or how you see yourself righteous, it was sort of like every man is a savage or every man has like violence within them and it
Mm-hmm.
can like be, triggered
Mm-hmm.
or it doesn't have to be triggered like the British man in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
yeah, it was sort of like, the uneducated men who were living in that town, they didn't need a reason to be violent. They
Yeah.
just were. They committed random crimes. They stole things. They killed cats.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to David's character, he had to be pushed to a level for him to show his violence, but he did show it
Yeah.
eventually.
I uh I don't think this film is as much about violence as it is about, you know, this this world that we live in, right? When we think about laws, society, they're only thin pieces of paper, right? An entire nation is kept together by this thing called a constitution, an idea called the nation, an idea called rule of law, habeas corpus, systems, social dynamics, and all that sort of stuff. All of that is essentially like sort of fake. Like when we think about it, when it all breaks down, when all of it breaks down, we are sort of living at the mercy of which man is more cunning, smarter, and dangerous. And that's sort of like what this film, I think, is about, right? And unfortunately, women, because of their biology, can sometimes be victims, uh, rather than successors over the whims of men, you know, who have more tendencies and more opportunities to be violent and successful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But I think in this movie, Amy wasn't just, a, a submissive or a victim just because of her physical attributes, but also because of her like behavior and how she acted and how she thought as well.
So then, are you saying that you agree with me? Like some things she did sort of invited the negativity to happen to her?
I'm not saying she deserved it, but I'm just saying like, yeah, like, how she was like showed as childish, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
how she demanded like protection, but at the same time she wanted to make her husband jealous.
Mm-hmm.
Those things, I think, make her, a victim outside of her physical, weaknesses.
Yeah,
And that's how like the movie portrays her, and that's what my problem is with the movie.
yeah. I think I agree with you. That's exactly what I said. So one last thing I want to ask you: should Amy have told him about the rape when it happened?
Of course.
Okay. Why do you think she didn't?
Well, like I said, I think there are multiple reasons, but I think it was, first of all, she probably thought there wouldn't be justice because obviously there's no law in this town. And second of all, she didn't believe that David would do anything to protect her, really protect
Yeah.
her.
I feel like if she called the cops and said, I got raped, the cop would say, so how did he get into the home? She was going to say, I let him in. Did you kiss him? Yes, I did at first, but I told him, ma'am, I have work to do.
Yeah, yeah. And also, like, probably David would ask the same questions to her as well. Like,
Yeah,
how it happened. And then she would have to also, like, lie. I gave him a drink,
yeah,
and those things. So that's why she, I guess, didn't tell him.
yeah. Is there any justice in this movie? Because I feel like, to some degree, right, the guys who are essentially trying to get Henry Niles are doing the right thing, but they don't know that they're doing the right thing. So I guess the question is, can you do the right thing if you're unaware of what you're doing? If you're doing it for the wrong reasons. They want to kill Henry Niles because they think he slept with Janice, not because he killed Janice. You get what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
to some degree, David is doing the right thing by killing all of his wife's rapists, but he doesn't know that they are his wife's rapists. I think this film asks a big philosophical question about what's right and wrong in that context of knowledge.
That's very interesting. And it's sort of like a irony
Hmm.
in this movie. But yeah, I mean, I guess they were all trying to do what's right for them,
Hmm.
and it sort of ended up like one side being wrong but still right, and same for the other side as well.
Yeah.
If that, because they were like wrong for raping Amy, but they
Yeah.
were right for trying to protect their sisters,
Yeah.
which is a which is like a hypocrite.
Hmm.
And then also like David, he was trying to protect his wife,
Yeah.
but he didn't protect her when, he needed. And also the guy he was trying to protect was guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very complex, you know? Like, it sort of makes you think about if somebody didn't know they were committing a crime, can you really say they were guilty? Under our law system, you would say yes, right? If you didn't know that, I don't know, torturing animals. Let's say you find a rat and you just want to cut it open while it's still alive. Technically, that's animal cruelty, right? But you might think, well, it's my home. I just found a rat, but you could actually be arrested for that. Should that person be arrested for something that they didn't know was a crime? You get what I'm saying? So it's sort of like a interesting thing about what we derive as right and wrong and how the law plays into it. You know?
Yeah, especially in a place where there's no law.
Yeah.
Who decides the right and wrong? Yeah, that is very
And
interesting.
and the thing is, I feel like in this case, the reason, we're looking at um, David as the right one is because he was the strongest one in the end. Even though he wasn't the guy with the most muscles or the most physical prowess, he outsmarted everybody and was able to kill them, right? So that's why we then say, yeah, he was the right one to some degree, other
I
than him being the protagonist.
I didn't think he was right because he won, but I thought he was right because he always tried to do the least violent thing,
Yeah,
and he sort of gave up and saw that there was no justice and no law until you show some violence.
yeah,
And then he did it. So that's why I thought he was right, because
yeah.
he sort of used it as a last resort.
Right, right. Now, this film was nominated for Academy Award for Best Music. It was also released in the same year as A Clockwork Orange. Have you seen A Clockwork Orange?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like it's overrated. What do you think?
I feel like it's not overrated. I think it's very deep.
I didn't like it. I watched it a few times. I couldn't get it. I couldn't get into it. But it was also released the same year as The French Connection and Dirty Harry. And this sparked a lot of controversy at the time because people were like, why are so many violent films, very, very violent films, being made all in 1971? And another thing is that, the title Straw Dogs is not mentioned at all in the film, right? But it comes from ancient Chinese ceremonies where instead of sacrificing real dogs to the gods, you would sacrifice a dog made of straw, right? And now this term straw dog essentially means something that's used and then discarded and forgotten about. And I think we were talking about this last night, but do you think Straw Dogs applies to all of the people here or just certain people or one character?
Well, I felt like it applied to Amy because she was sacrificed, I guess by like the machismo and, violence around her. And she never really got her piece about that part,
Hmm.
you know. And even though, at the end her rapist died, she never had closure.
Hmm. I see. I guess you could say, her rapist not being here to face mortal justice is one thing. But if you believe in the afterlife, you could be like, well, there is some justice for Amy there, right? I think everybody here is somewhat of a straw dog because in a world where violence rules, everybody can be discarded. Everybody is replaceable. There's a scene in this film where they show all the kids in the village, right? So there's a new crop of fucked up hillbillies ready to take everybody's place who got killed. You get what I'm saying? So, I feel like this film is saying like in our lives, because we're living in such a violent world, everybody can have something like this happen to you, right? We can all be the victims of mob violence and mob justice and mob mentality.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess it could apply for like both of them,
Hmm.
like Amy and David.
Hmm. Yeah, I think David could be a straw dog because he was about to get killed, right? Amy could have been used up, right? She was used for her body and then like discarded by these guys. You get what I'm saying? And to some degree, the guys were seen as straw dogs, right? They were used to work and then they're supposed to be forgotten about to languish in their bars and pubs and do manual labor all day, stuff like that. So yeah, I think everybody here is kind of a straw dog.
Yeah, I mean that is a general like idea, but I
Hmm.
feel like title specifically refers to either Amy or both David and Amy.
Yeah. But that's all I got to say about this film. Overall, acting was good. Cinematography, I liked. And I liked the story. Would I watch it again? Possibly no, because I feel like once you see the story, there's not much more to grab from it. But it is interesting. It is a good story, I would say.
So what is your final rating?
8.5. 8.5.
8.5.
What
Okay,
about
so
you?
for me, like I said, I had problems with like how the woman's character was, acted, and how it was sort of made look.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was a slow burn, and it sort of made me sleepy a little bit, and I was waiting for it, like the action part. But then when the action part came, it was actually good, and it was
Mm-hmm.
sort of like worth the wait. So yeah, it's like a home invasion movie. I
Mm-hmm.
would say maybe even one of the first ones. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're like a, horror thriller geek,
Mm-hmm.
I think you can check this out. But personally, like, I don't know if I would watch it again. I would
Yeah.
recommend it to people who are interested in that sort of, genre,
Yeah. I,
possibly.
I think
And
this is a
yeah.
psych thriller. I don't think this is a horror per se. It's a psych thriller with some action elements and some cultural satire.
Yeah, but it is a home invasion movie.
Right? I mean, it is technically cabin in the woods,
Yeah.
axe murderers.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know, like, I wouldn't recommend it to, like, every friend of mine, because I know they wouldn't like it.
Hmm.
But for me, I would give it a 6.
I see. I see. Okay, a 6. Interesting. Well, we'll agree to disagree. But shout out to Nelson for suggesting this film. Shout out to everybody who's listening so far. We appreciate everybody who's tuning into our work. And if you have any more movie reviews requests, put them in the comments. This is episode 73 of Simon and Acting Movie Reviews. Peace.